Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure for us to be in London and present our paper. And this paper is based on the research work when I was in University of Alberta during my PhD studies. Therefore, all the authors are from University of Alberta. Depot currently is working for Suncor Energy. Dr. Wisco, Dr. Ivy, and Dr. Hannon are in the same research group. And Dr. Ivy and Dr. Hannon are my two supervisors. And this map shows where we are from. So we are from Canada, province of Alberta. University of Alberta is located in Edmonton. For this university, it has 105 years history, and it has about 39,000 students. 80% are the undergrads, 20% are graduate students, about 3,200 academic staff. There are lots of research programs are going on currently, and the characterization of the microalloy steels is one of them. Today, I will follow this outline to introduce our paper. First are the introduction and objectives. Next are the experimental methods, tests, and results. Last are the conclusions and acknowledgements. Thermomechanical controlled processing has been widely used in industry to control the microstructure evolution. And this figure shows a schematic CCT diagram for the microalloy steels. And it has reheating process, rough rolling, finish rolling, accelerated cooling, and coiling. During reheating process, the steel is reheated to soak temperature about 1250 degrees C for austenite homogenization. During rough rolling process, the austenite grain size is broken down due to recrystallization. Therefore, the average grain size is much smaller compared to the original austenite. During the finish rolling process, we can obtain pancaked austenite. At even lower temperature during accelerated cooling, so phase transformation will occur. During this thermomechanical controlled process, the precipitation behavior will also be affected. For example, during the reheating process, some of the microalloy elements will dissolve into the solid solution, go back to the steel matrix. When the temperature goes down and when it reaches the solubility of the precipitates, they will come out as a precipitate. They will have a grain size refinement effect. At lower temperature during phase transformation, some nano-sized precipitates will show up, and they have precipitation strengthening effect. And the rest of the microalloy element will stay in the steel matrix. They will have a solid solution strengthening effect. The objectives of this research is to understand the strengthening mechanisms of microalloyed steels. So first, we need to determine the strengthening contribution due to grain size effect. Then also we need to determine the strengthening contribution due to precipitation effect. Therefore, we need to characterize the precipitate size, morphology, and chemistry. And also we need to quantify the amount of the nano-sized precipitates. Finally, we will understand the nano-sized precipitation as a function of the steel chemistry and processing histories. There are a few challenges associated with this product. First is the fine sizes of the precipitates. The fine size of the precipitates can go down to 5 nanometer. And also with the precipitates, they have a wide particle size distribution. And the larger size of precipitates can go to a few micron. And they have low volume fraction because these precipitates are in the microalloy elements. They have very limited amount of the microalloy elements. And also the precipitates have the same crystal structure. They are sodium chloride FCC structure with very limited, very similar lattice parameters. Therefore, it is very hard to differentiate in between the precipitates. And this table shows the chemical composition and processing histories of the steels that have been used in our research work. There are 9 types of steels. So we have X70, 4 types of X80, 1 grade 100, and 3 X100 steels. So from chemistry, we can see that those they have niobium, titanium, moly, and vanadium elements in these steels. For the processing histories, and here we provide the normalized finished rolling temperature and cooling temperature compared to one of the X80 steels. And we can also see that for all these steels, niobium is one of the important microalloy elements. And grade 100 steel has the highest niobium content. And this steel also have a high content of titanium, vanadium. And we did lots of exploration on the methodology of this research work. And we finally combine different techniques to achieve our research work. First, we use SEM technique to do the grain size measurement. And we also use TEM technique to characterize the precipitates. There are two types of TEM samples. And the first one is using the thin foil samples. This technique will help us get the precipitate distribution in the matrix. And also we use carbon replicas. We use carbon replica to extract the precipitates and then use copper grade to carry this sample to do the SEM or TEM analysis. This is mainly focused on the size measurement, morphology, and chemistry of the precipitate studies. The most complex portion is the matrix dissolution portion. So we need to find some solution to effectively dissolve the steel matrix. And then we using the centrifuging technique to remove the supernatant. And at the same time, we will collect the residues. The residues are the precipitates after dissolution of the steel matrix. And for these residues, we will bring for the SEM, TEM analysis, also for the size measurement, for the chemistry analysis of these precipitates. And also we bring these residues to perform XRD analysis. So this will help us to determine the crystal structure of these precipitates. And using the real-world refinement, it will help us to refine the crystal structure of the precipitates. It will also give us the volume fraction of the precipitates. And with the supernatant that being removed after the centrifuging process, we will bring them for ICP analysis. So for the element concentration analysis, based on the steel chemistry and the ICP analysis, we will get the mass balance of each of the microalloy elements. And here shows the sample images of the SEM results. And we can see with the increase of the with the increase of the steel grade, the grain size will be reduced. And based on the grain size measurement, so we can plot the Hall-Patch equation. And here, there are two sets of the data. The red points shows the adjusted value, and they are the actual measurement using the they are the actual results based on the grain size measurement. And the blue points, they are the values compared to the actual yield strength of the steels. From the from these two sets of the data, we can see that their slope is similar. So this means that the Hall-Patch equation is valid for the steels that we studied here. And here shows the TEM images for the precipitates that we use thin foil sample for grade 100 steel. On the left side, it is a bright field image. On the right side, it is a dark field image. And on the left side, we can see the grain size, the grain boundaries, and we can also see the nano-sized precipitates that they exist within the grain. And also, we use carbon replicas to extract precipitates. And on the left side, it is a bright field image of from the grade 100 steel. And on the right side, it is a dark field image. And the inset on the bright field image, it is a selected area diffraction. So this will indicate that the precipitates are sodium chloride FCC structure. And for the based on the EDX analysis, these nanosized precipitates are composed by niobium moly-rich precipitates. And also we use matrix dissolution. We extract the precipitates and also bring them for TEM analysis. And on the left and right side, they are both bright field images. And EDX indicates that they are niobium moly-rich precipitates. It further confirms the chemistry of these nano-sized precipitates. And we're using the same approach to characterize the precipitates for X70, X80, grade 100 steels. However, in X100 steels, we didn't find these nano-sized precipitates. For all other steels, we find the nano-sized precipitates. And here shows two samples of the TEM images for the precipitates from X100 steel via carbon replicas. And we can see that the precipitate size is less than 100 nanometer. The EDX indicates these precipitates are titanium niobium rich. And previously we mentioned that with the supernatant being removed, we will take them for ICP analysis to do the concentration analysis of the microalloy elements. And compared to the steel chemistry, that we can get the mass balance for the microalloy element. And this figure shows the weight percentage of the niobium in the steels. And it indicates that most of the niobium finally will stay in the precipitates, and only small amount of them stay in the steel matrix as solid solution. And oppositely for the moly, so most of moly will dissolve in the steel matrix, and only small amount of that precipitated out. And we already introduced that when we take the extract the precipitates, we'll bring them for X-ray diffraction analysis. And here shows a few samples of the residues from these four type of steels that we used. The preliminary analysis shows that there are two groups of precipitates exist in all of these steels. One type is niobium carbide rich, shows by the green squares. And another type is titanium rich, titanium nitride rich, and shows by the red points. And from here we can see that all the precipitates have the same crystal microstructure, their FCC structure. And also the lattice parameter is very close. So because the peaks are very close, so it is hard to differentiate between the precipitates. Therefore, we have to try to use other approaches to do that. And in our research work, we use the real-world refinement technique to further analyze our XRD pattern. And this technique is a full pattern profile refinement. And the purpose of this technique is to minimize a function S. This S represents the difference between the calculated Y value to the observed Y value. So if we minimize this S value, this shows that the fitting effect the fitting performance is good. And this technique can also give us simultaneously crystal structure refinement. It can help us give the lattice parameter of different phases that exist in the precipitates. And also it will give us the quantitative phase analysis, and from that we can get the volume fraction of these precipitates, especially for the nano-sized precipitates. And here shows the example of the real-world refinement of the XRD pattern from the grade 100 steel residues. And the first figure on the top, it is the overall XRD pattern profile fitting. and it shows that the fitting is pretty well. And for the green line, it shows the difference between the calculated value and the actual measured values. It looks pretty good. And for the real-world refinement, we can obtain the other phases that stay in these precipitates. Therefore, below the first figure, we have 4 of that, and that indicate the peaks of the specific precipitates that stay in the residues from this stew. And we are more interested in the nano-sized precipitates. That's in the right bottom corner. So the chemistry is already listed here. So we can see that this type of precipitates have a broad peak. So it is very hard to differentiate by the preliminary analysis of the XRD pattern. So therefore, we have to use real-world refinement to differentiate this. And for the real-world refinement, all the precipitate information is based on the lab results, like TM analysis and EDX analysis for the chemistry, and the precipitate size is based on the also EDX observation, based on the TM observation. So from here we can see that for X70, the 4 types of X80 steels, and including the grade 100 steels, they all have the very fine nano-sized precipitates, about 5 nanometer in size. And for the 3 types of X100 steels, so most of the precipitates are less than 100. We didn't find the nano-sized precipitates. So this may relate to the chemistry of this steel and also the processing histories of this steel. We will introduce that a little bit later. On the bottom of this table, it shows the actual lattice parameter of the single-phase microalloy element here. So from here, we can see that all these lattice parameters are very close. That's why it is hard to differentiate these phases. Based on the real-world refinement, we can obtain the weight fraction of each of the precipitates from the density, so we can get the volume fraction of the precipitates. Therefore, we can get the effect of the microalloy content or the processing histories on the volume fraction of these nanoprecipitates. So this figure shows that with the increase of niobium content in the steel, the volume fraction of the nano-sized precipitates will increase. So for the 3 types of X100 steels, because they have a lower niobium content, no nano-sized precipitate is observed. And similarly, this figure shows the effect of the cooling temperature or interrupted cooling temperature on the volume fraction of the nano-sized precipitates. So with the increase of the cooling temperature or interrupted cooling temperature, the volume fraction of the nano-sized precipitates will increase. For the 3 X100 steels, they have much lower cooling temperature. So this may explain that this is why we didn't find the very fine nano-sized precipitates in these 3 types of the microalloy steels. And from the above experimental research work, so we can get the grain size strengthening effect based on the grain size measurement. So we can obtain the precipitation strengthening effect based on the XRD and also the real-world refinement. So the rest of the microalloyment will contribute to solid solution strengthening effect. This is based on the steel chemistry and also the ICP analysis of the mass balance. But how can we correlate with these individual strengthening mechanisms to the actual yield strength of the steels? So this is the next work we need to solve. And from the literature, there are 3 types of superposition of the strengthening mechanisms. The first one is the linear summation. That means all the strengthening contribution can be assumed as a linear relationship. So it can be explained by the equation shows here. And the second is using the root mean square summation. And the third one is using combination of linear and root mean square summation. And the next slide I will show, based on our research work, so which kind of superposition is more appropriate. And the pink dots showing that we are using the linear function. So this intends that if we are using the linear function, this technique or this summation intends to overestimate the actual yield strength of the steel, because there may be a synergy effect between the grain size refinement and also the precipitation strengthening effect. And if we are using the combination of the linear and root mean square, that will fit much better. That's the green triangles shown here. And this figure gives us kind of visual explanation of the individual strengthening components to the actual yield strength of the materials. And from here we can see that the grain size strengthening effect is the main contributor to the yield strength of all the microalloyed steels. And the other contribution from grain size effect, from solid solution strengthening or precipitation strengthening, they may vary based on the different steels that having different microalloy content and processing histories. Okay, based on the above results and research work, we can get the following conclusions. First, grain size decreases with increasing grades of the steels. The behavior followed the Hall-Patch equation. With the higher cooling rates and the lower cooling temperature or interrupted cooling temperature, it will promote grain refinement. Matrix dissolution methods are effective in extracting sufficient of precipitates for quantitative analysis. Real-world refinement of XRD data combined with the electron microscopy was successful to identify and determine the relative amounts of different precipitate phases. For the X70, X80, and grade 100 steels, they had similar processing histories. Higher microalloy content will increase the precipitation, leading to higher volume fraction and the number density of the nanoprecipitates. For the three types of X100 steels, we didn't find nano-sized precipitates with about 5 nanometer in size. This may be due to the low interrupted cooling temperature of these three steels. Niobium moly-rich nano-sized precipitates and solid solution strengthening were quantified in X70, X80, and grade 100 steels, and they contribute significantly to the yield strength. It is about 40 to 50%. The last is that for all steels, grain refinement was a major contributor to strengthening of these microalloyed steels. Thanks give to Everest and NSERC for the financial support. Thanks also goes to CBMM, Beta Technology, IOM3 for the award and for the invitation for us to come here to London. And especially thanks to Nyla, Ben, and Georgia for all the arrangements. Thank you very much.